Hello, Toastmasters. Those of you who were fortunate enough to be here several weeks ago when Amen gave her wonderful presentation on Johari's window may recall that, in short, Johari's window is about what others know and don't know about us, intersecting with what we only know about ourselves and others don't know, and what we only know about ourselves and don't know. One of those little quadrants in that diagram really intrigued me, and that was the lower left quadrant, which is called a facade. I remember thinking, I didn't know that wearing a facade was a designated official category. I thought that if I was just wearing a facade, that meant that I am a poser. I'm just a poser, I suppose. Nevertheless, that intrigued me and invoked a memory many years ago when we lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, when I was homeschooling our three children sort of by default. Now, the district that we had moved into was not academically performing that well, but no problem. We had decided to send our kids to private schools. We did for a few years, but after 2 years, they were not addressing my daughter's dyslexia as well as her quintessential lack of phonemic awareness. My older son's attitude was tanking. And then one day my husband came home and said, we can't afford to send our kids to the private schools anymore. Well, what was I to do? We were not in a position to move. The academic performance of the school district we were in really was poor by Cincinnati standards. They had the following designations. A school district would be assessed as excellent, very good, good, fair, poor, and then the very bottom rung, which meant that your school district is essentially tanking, is needs improvement. The Wilson School District, as I have renamed it, to protect the innocent, was constantly hovering between needs improvement and poor. I was so determined not to send my kids there and homeschool if need be, that I remember talking with a friend of mine. I said to her, if I were on my deathbed and someone were to say to me, please tell us what is your final wish before you pass on, do tell us, I would have said, promise me that you will never, ever send my children to the Wilson School District. That's how determined I was not to send them there. I researched an excellent classical curricula, which I embarked upon. It seemed to be working well for the first few years. But the one area where I felt like I was a facade, the quintessential facade, was when I had to teach science, especially to my oldest son. During his 5th grade year, we were using one of many textbooks. One was a physical sciences book. He was reading about how engines work. The drill was, I would ask him some questions after he read. He would respond. There was no written response because the curricula was very heavy laden with other writing activities. This particular day, the question was, how does an engine work? I remember thinking before I asked him, I don't even know. I don't even know how an engine works. I was feeling so burned out. I thought, I hope he doesn't ask me. I hope he doesn't call me to the carpet. Well, he rarely did. I thought he probably won't because he hasn't up to this point. He's just a little boy. So after lunch, we began our science lesson. I said, okay, Ryan, you did your reading. So tell me, how does an engine work? And he said, oh, that's easy. First, then all of a sudden, he got a very shrewd look in his face. And he said, wait a minute, Mom, do you know how an engine works? And I said, just answer the question, Ryan. How does an engine work? And he said, but do you know? I said, that's not the issue. Just answer the question. How does an engine work? And he said, I don't think you know. I don't think you know at all, do you? You don't know. You don't know. And all of a sudden, I had a flashback of The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy, the Scarecrow, and the Lion are walking down the great throne to meet the Wizard of Oz. There are peals of thunder, and they hear this voice, you dare to approach the throne of Oz. And then all of a sudden, Toto grabs the curtain. Toto is Dorothy's dog, and he rips open this curtain to expose this frenetic little old man manipulating all these knobs, and you hear this voice that says, pay no attention to the man behind that curtain. I felt like I was being completely exposed, fling wide the doors of hypocrisy. He was a very relentless little kid. He kept badgering me, saying, you don't know how an engine works, do you? And finally, in a moment of complete weariness, I said, no, you're right, I don't know how an engine works. I don't know. And then he just looked at me and he said, and you expect me to be homeschooled by you. I don't believe you. And he just walked off. And I thought, oh, he called my bluff. Time to find a plan B. A year from now, I will not be homeschooling this kid. That night, my husband came home from work and said, so how did the homeschooling go today, Ann? And I said, essentially, I can't do this no more. And he said, what do you mean? I said, your son called my bluff. One of the questions was, do you know how an engine works? And I couldn't explain it to him. I can't do this anymore. Fortunately, divine providence intervened. A friend of mine told me about a wonderful Latin school in northern Kentucky called Covington Latin School, which is still around today. It's been around since 1923. I thought I'd give it a try. I had him take the entrance exam. He, by the grace of God, did very well, received a hefty scholarship and a work study. The rest is history. He just earned his Master's of Business Administration degree from the University of Michigan last April while working full-time and is getting married in November. Anyways, I must end this with a challenge for you, my fellow Toastmasters. Where do you fall on the Johari's window? Are there any other posers in this room besides me? Now, you may be a poser because of through default to get through a rough situation like I did, or maybe deliberately. Either way, be at peace. Do not let it bother you. Because in the final analysis, fellow Toastmasters, when our lives on this earth are over and all is said and done, I do believe that if we could look back, we could say that. You don't have to know how an engine works.